I saw my sister's phone beside my husband on our bed. That's how it started. Not a dramatic affair. Not a lipstick stain. Not even a text message I wasn't supposed to see. Just a phone. An unlocked, glowing screen on the wrong side of the bed. And something about it didn't sit right. The way it was turned face down like it didn't belong to him, but also not to me. The way the charger cord was stretched from my side of the nightstand. The way he looked too calm, like he was already pretending to be asleep. My name is Renee Starks. I'm 46 years old, born and raised just outside of Augusta, Georgia. And this is the story of how I learned that silence can be louder than revenge. That night, I didn't say a word. I just walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. Not crying, not angry. Just watching my own reflection breathe. The mirror light was too bright, showing every fine line around my eyes, every ghost of an emotion I hadn't yet allowed to surface. My toothbrush leaned against the cup like it was waiting for instructions. I reached for it out of habit, brushed my teeth slow. The mint burned. The foam tasted metallic. I took off my earrings, the small gold hoops he'd given me 2 Christmases ago when he was still trying to be a good man. I placed them on the counter gently, like they might explode if I dropped them too hard. Then I tied my hair down. Smooth motions, calm hands. The kind of calm that isn't peace, it's control. But my mind was already downloading everything. My sister's name is Michelle, younger by 4 years. Always had a thing for things that didn't belong to her. Clothes, cars, credit cards, and men. She'd come to stay with us 3 weeks ago after a bad breakup. That's what she called it. Said she just needed a safe space while she figured things out. I let her in. Because that's what sisters do. Even when they don't deserve it. Even when they walk around your kitchen in tight sleep shorts and full face makeup at 9 in the morning. Even when they laugh a little too hard at your husband's corny jokes while you're still setting the table. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow. Each rotation felt like a clock tick I couldn't escape. He snored lightly beside me, mouth half open, like a man with nothing on his conscience. But I knew better. By morning, my chest felt heavy, like I was carrying something fragile and dangerous all at once. The next morning, I waited for them both to leave. He left at 7:42, like always, coffee thermos in hand, car keys jingling, that same "love you" tossed over his shoulder like small talk. Michelle left a few minutes later, perfume cloud following her down the hall. Said she had a job interview across town. She wore one of my blazers. Didn't ask. I didn't even finish my coffee. I went straight to the hall closet, moved the stack of towels and pulled out the little lockbox he thought I didn't know about, the one he kept just for old receipts. I knew better. Inside, beneath a folded envelope of insurance papers, was the backup SD card for our living room camera. The one I installed 2 years ago when packages kept disappearing off the porch. The one pointed straight down the hallway between the bedrooms. The one he always forgot about. I slid the card into my laptop. The screen lit up blue. My stomach dropped. The footage was all there. 3 nights ago, 11:32 p.m. The image was grainy but clear enough to hurt. My bedroom door opened. My husband stepped out, shirtless, wearing those faded plaid pajama pants I kept threatening to throw away. Then Michelle came out of the guest room, not in a robe, in a silk slip. The same one I bought during last year's Macy's clearance. Still had the tag mark where I'd cut the thread. They didn't kiss. Didn't even touch. But the look they gave each other. That's what made my stomach twist. A silent glance. Heavy. Lingering. Too familiar. He leaned against the wall, lazy, comfortable, like a man who'd done it before. She didn't flinch. Just walked right past him, hips loose, head down like she belonged there. Then, after a few steps, she turned back. Said something, too quiet for the mic to catch, leaning close, whispering right in his ear. He smiled, a small knowing smile. Then they both disappeared back into separate rooms, separate doors, but not separate lives. That's when my hands started shaking, not from rage, from clarity. Everything made sense now, the sudden distance, the quiet arguments about nothing, the way he stopped reaching for me at night, the way she'd started doing yoga in the living room, blinds open, right when he came home from work. It wasn't paranoia, it was pattern. I sat there with that footage playing on loop, watched it 7 times, muted, unmoving. Each replay stripped another layer of denial away. By the 7th run, I wasn't even blinking. Then I made a plan. I didn't scream, didn't storm into their rooms, didn't throw a single thing. I just breathed, slow and deliberate. Then I started writing. Call logs, times, patterns. I wrote everything down in a small spiral notebook, the one with the floral cover she'd once borrowed and never returned. That night, after the house went still, I moved quiet as smoke, slipped the second hidden camera, the one I'd bought months ago but never installed, into the vent above the guest room dresser, motion-triggered, infrared, perfect angle on the bed. I didn't know what I'd catch, but I knew I'd catch something. Over the next few days, I played dumb, smiled at breakfast, asked about her interview, laughed at my husband's stories like I still believed in us. When he brushed my shoulder, I didn't pull away. When she said, "You're such a lucky woman," I didn't flinch. But inside, I was already recording everything. Monday turned into Tuesday. Tuesday slid into Wednesday. Each night, I checked the footage. Each morning, I waited. And by Friday, I had enough. Michelle left early that morning, said she was meeting a friend for brunch, left her bedroom door unlocked. I waited until I heard his car pull out, waited until the house went silent again. Then I went inside her room. The air smelled like her perfume, sweet, synthetic, too strong. Her bed was unmade, makeup brushes scattered on the vanity, and that's where I saw it. A pink Post-it note stuck to her mirror like it was nothing. My husband's handwriting. It said, "She suspects. We need to slow down." Just that. No apology, no guilt, no shame, not "I'm sorry," not "this is wrong." Just instructions, cold strategy, like I was some obstacle to work around. My breath left me slow, the kind of slow that feels like smoke rising from something burned. I took a picture of the note, then another, just to be sure. After that, I sat down at her vanity chair, staring at my reflection in her mirror. Our faces looked alike in that glass, same cheekbones, same eyes. But I was the one who had built a life. She was the one trying to steal it. I reached for her perfume bottle and turned it over, half empty. Figures. I didn't cry, didn't even sigh. I just stood up, walked to my laptop, and backed everything up. The hallway footage, the time-stamped files, every video clip, all saved to my private cloud. Then again, to a separate drive, just in case. Then I sat in the living room, calm, quiet, and I waited. Because if they were going to play this game in my house, they were about to learn who taught them how to move in silence. That evening, I made lemon pepper chicken just the way he liked it. The smell filled the whole kitchen, warm, citrusy, buttery. I could hear the light sizzle of the pan, the faint crackle of skin crisping under heat. It used to be one of his favorite things about me, how I seasoned food with my heart instead of measurements, how I hummed when I cooked. But that night, I didn't hum. Michelle set the table like she always did, humming some song from TikTok, offbeat and too loud. She moved with that fake ease people have when they're trying to look innocent. Every motion rehearsed, every smile sharpened by guilt. She placed the silverware crooked, then fixed it, then smiled at herself in the reflection of the glass like she'd done something worth admiring. He came in from work a little after 7, the smell of cologne and stale office air following him, loosened his tie, kissed my cheek out of habit, not affection. His lips brushed skin, but his mind wasn't there. I could feel it. I smiled through it all, polite, present, patient. While they laughed about a movie they'd accidentally watched together 2 nights ago, some comedy he'd sworn he Didn't have time for when I asked last week. I refilled their sweet tea, smiled, nodded, and pretended I didn't feel the walls closing in. But inside, I was gathering. Every blink, every breath, every sideways glance between them. The way her eyes darted to him before she laughed. The way he avoided meeting mine. The subtle rhythm of two people trying too hard to act casual. And after dinner, when Michelle offered to wash the dishes, her way of saying thanks, and he conveniently slipped off to take a call in the garage, I didn't follow either of them. I stepped out onto the porch instead. The night air was cool. A faint hum of cicadas filled the silence between my thoughts. I leaned against the railing, phone in hand, and called my cousin Letitia. Letitia works at the county recorder's office, knows everything about everybody. Divorces, liens, quiet title filings, LLC registrations, trust deeds, even the gossip hidden between redacted lines. When she picked up, I could hear the click of her keyboard in the background. "Hey, baby, you good?" I didn't tell her everything, not yet. "I need a favor," I said. My voice sounded steady, too steady. "Anything," she said. "What you need?" "I need to know if my husband's been filing anything in his name. Property, accounts, trusts, anything that might leave me out." Letitia paused. The kind of pause that tells you she's already putting the pieces together. She didn't ask questions, didn't pry, just said, "Girl, text me his full name and social. I'll get back to you tomorrow." "Thank you," I whispered. You just hang tight, Renee. You hear me? Don't do nothing yet." "I won't," I lied. I ended the call, took a deep breath, and stepped back inside. The sound of running water and clinking plates filled the kitchen. Michelle was still humming, her back turned to me. I walked up behind her, leaned down, and kissed her on the forehead like we were still little girls. She flinched, just slightly. She knew I knew, but she didn't know how far I'd go. That night, while they slept, I moved like a ghost. I packed a duffel bag, not for me, for her. 3 outfits. Her prepaid phone charger, the leftover hair grease she'd been using from my bathroom drawer like I wouldn't notice. I folded everything neatly, laid it out like a goodbye. Then I wrote a note on a yellow Post-it, black ink, clear letters. "You have until 8 a.m. I taped it to the top of the bag and set it on the kitchen island, right where the morning light would hit it. No screaming, no confrontation, no dramatics, just a quiet eviction. Then I went to bed early and locked the door. At 7:52 the next morning, I heard the front door click open. Soft steps, a bag zipper, the creak of the hinge, then silence. No goodbye, no apology, just the echo of what used to be family walking out my front door. When I came into the kitchen, the bag was gone. Michelle was gone. But his coffee was still brewing like it was any other Friday. Steam rising, the smell of routine pretending to be normal. He didn't ask where she went, didn't say her name, just sat at the counter, scrolling through his phone like a man waiting for peace to return. I didn't give him that luxury. "Tell me when it started," I said. He blinked like he didn't hear me, didn't move. I set my mug down, hard enough for it to echo. "I'm not asking if, I'm asking when." He sighed, set his phone down slow, like buying time would change the truth. "It didn't mean anything," he finally said. I laughed. Not loud, just enough to remind myself I could still breathe. "You risked 21 years of marriage for nothing?" His face twitched, that mix of guilt and arrogance men wear when they think they can charm their way out of the grave they dug. He had no answer, so I gave him one. "I already saw the footage," I said quietly. "I already know about the notes. I know everything." He looked at me, then away. The clock ticked between us. Still, he sat there like he had time to fix this. Men like him always think they can fix what they broke with the right apology. But I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had burned itself out. What was left was colder, sharper. "Letitia's checking court records for me," I said, standing. "You've got until Monday to come clean about anything you've filed without me." He stood too, reaching out slightly. Renee, it's not like that. I held up a hand. You're still lying. Then I turned, walked upstairs, packed my bag this time. Not out of fear, out of clarity. When I zipped that suitcase, it sounded like closure. I left the house without slamming the door, drove until the streets thinned out and the world got quiet again. Checked into a Marriott near the old water tower, the one with the Waffle House glowing yellow across the street. The clerk handed me a key card and said, "Enjoy your stay." I almost laughed. I didn't cry that night, didn't even replay what happened. I slept, deep. The kind of sleep you only get when you've finally stopped pretending everything's fine. The next morning, I took a long shower, let the hot water sting my shoulders, rinse away 21 years of pretending not to notice. Then I read a book, got my nails done, took myself to breakfast like I used to before all this. By Sunday morning, my phone rang. Letitia. "Girl, you sitting down?" "Why?" She exhaled. "Because what I found ain't small." My heart slowed. "Go on." 3 weeks ago, she said. Same day Michelle moved in, your husband filed for a solo business license. Under his name only. He used your home address. I swallowed hard. For what kind of business? Consulting, she said. Guess who he listed as primary consultant? Silence. I didn't have to guess. Michelle. There it was. Proof this. Wasn't just betrayal. It was transition. A full exit plan, dressed up in legal paperwork. Not a fling. A replacement. I thanked Letitia softly. You're a blessing. She said, You gonna be all right, baby? I will be, I said, now that I know. I hung up, sat there in the hotel armchair. The sunlight was warm on my knees. Outside, I could hear the distant hum of cars passing, life still moving like mine hadn't just cracked open. That was the moment I stopped feeling like a wife, stopped hoping, stopped mourning, and started building. When I got home, I didn't announce a thing. I cooked, cleaned, watered my front porch plants like it was just another weekend. Meanwhile, I made calls. First to my old college roommate, Monique. She runs a private security firm out of Macon. When she picked up, she said, Girl, what's wrong? You sound too calm. I need to find out what my husband's doing when I'm not around. Okay, she said. You want him gone or you want leverage? Both. Monique chuckled, low. Say less. She gave me a name, Carla. Discreet, licensed, legal, excellent at surveillance. By the next day, Carla had a tracker on his car, a hidden mic under the back seat, and a bug in his office drawer. Within 72 hours, I had audio files. He'd been telling his coworkers Michelle was staying for good, that we were working on separating quietly, that I'd become too bitter to live with. The same week, he was still kissing me goodbye, complimenting my sweet tea. I copied every file, saved every clip, printed transcripts in duplicate. Then I called my lawyer, not for divorce, not yet, for protection, for control. Because if he wanted to play legal, I was going to play smart. The next week, I met with a realtor and quietly started the process of listing the house. Turns out, since the mortgage was in my name and my name only, thanks to that refinance I handled myself back in 2016, he couldn't block the sale, couldn't claim a thing without me. I smiled all the way through the paperwork, because it was finally time to remove the last piece from the board. Michelle was gone. The mask had fallen, and now it was his turn to find out how loud silence could be. I sold the house in 12 days. Cash buyer, a veteran couple from North Carolina, retired Army nurse and her husband, a man with kind eyes and calloused hands, wanting to move closer to their grandkids in Augusta. They came by twice, walking through the rooms like they could already see Christmas mornings and Sunday dinners in them. The wife ran her hand along the banister like she was greeting an old friend. The husband stopped in front of the big window in the living room and said, This light, you can't build light like this anymore. They offered $10,000 above asking before I could even pour them another cup of sweet tea. I accepted before they could blink. Meanwhile, I didn't say a word to my husband. Not one. I let him keep coming home like everything was normal. Let him toss his jacket over the same chair I'd told him not to 100 times. Let him keep watching the same flat screen, laying on the same couch I bought with my overtime checks. Let him keep brushing his teeth in the mirror of a house that would no longer belong to him. He never noticed the for sale sign because I made sure it never touched the lawn. Private listing, handled through Monique's channels. People who knew how to keep business quiet. No open houses, no curious neighbors, no gossip, just contracts, signatures, and wire transfers behind the scenes. By the time the deal closed, the papers were already notarized and the funds were sitting neatly in my account. When closing day came, I had Carla install a GPS trip alert on his car. He always left for work around the same time. Predictable. A creature of habit right down to the minute. As soon as the notification hit my phone that he'd pulled into his usual parking lot, I texted the movers. 3 trucks, 4 men, 10 years of memories boxed and labeled by 10:15 a.m. I kept everything I bought, left everything he brought. The split was surgical. The couch with my name on the receipt came with me. The recliner his mother gave him stayed behind. Even my grandmother's rocking chair, the one he said didn't fit the aesthetic, went right on the truck. I wrapped it in a blanket myself. She'd rocked me through storms in that chair. It wasn't staying with a man who never understood peace. Michelle's leftover things? Boxed, sealed, and shipped to a P.O. box in Alabama. No note, no explanation. She'd know who it came from. That was enough. By 3 p.m., I was sitting in my rental condo downtown with the keys in one hand and a cup of peach tea in the other. A quiet place. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, white walls, an echoing space that smelled like new beginnings and fresh paint. A balcony that caught the afternoon light just right. Soft gold on the floorboards, warm on my face. I didn't cry, didn't smile either. I just sat in the silence and let the dust settle. Then I turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls, 14 from him, 3 from Michelle. No voicemails, just missed calls, like they were scared to put it in words. I didn't call back, didn't need to. Because at 5:42 p.m., my phone buzzed again, a text. From him. Where's the house? Not where are you? Not can we talk? Just those 4 words. I didn't answer. A few seconds later, another text. What's going on? Then another. Renee, please. Then finally, I'm sorry. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard, but I didn't type anything. Not yet. I needed him to feel it. That confusion, that silence. That hollow panic that comes when you realize the world doesn't spin around you anymore. Let it sink into his chest like a slow ache. Let him drive. Home to an empty street, an empty driveway, an empty house. Let him see the outline on the wall where the TV used to hang, the clean ring on the nightstand where his phone charger once sat. Let him walk through those rooms and understand. He'd been evicted without a single scream, a single fight, a single sound. At 8:13 p.m., I sent one line. You'll be getting the divorce papers at your office this week. Sign them. That was it. I blocked his number right after. No arguments, no back and forth, no explanations. Just silence. And the sound of a door quietly closing behind me. That night, I slept good. Better than I had in months. The sheets were crisp and cool against my skin. The air conditioner hummed a steady rhythm that sounded almost like peace. When I woke up, sunlight was slipping through the blinds, warm and forgiving, the kind of light that doesn't judge you for surviving. I brewed coffee in the little drip pot that came with the condo. Cheap stuff. The kind I used to buy before we started worrying about brands. It tasted like freedom. I walked barefoot to the balcony, mug in hand, and just stood there. Watching the city hum below me, car horns, birds on the wire, someone laughing down on the sidewalk, life, moving on, with or without my permission, new air, new space, new rules, and I had no intention of going back to the old ones. 3 days later, Letitia called again. "You might want to sit down, sis," she said. My stomach tightened. What now? Turns out Michelle had filed a harassment complaint against me, said I'd threatened her, boxed up her things, sent them across state lines without her consent. Letitia scanned the documents and texted them over. Filed in a small county court across the Alabama border. Petty, but dangerous if I let it slide. So I did what women like me always do when backed into a corner. I got up early, put on my best blouse, the teal one that made my skin glow, and drove to Tamika's shop on 14th. She looked up from her chair when I walked in. "You got court today?" "Something like that." She smiled. "Then sit down, baby. Let me make sure you walk in there looking like the truth." An hour later, my hair was laid, edges slick, curls soft but unbreakable. I looked in the mirror and saw her, the woman I used to be, the one who didn't beg for understanding, the one who never lowered her voice to be believed. I drove to the courthouse myself. No lawyer, no entourage. Just me, my receipts, and the truth. When the judge called my name, I stood straight. I handed over the surveillance footage, the transcripts, the screenshots of texts she sent my husband before she ever moved in. Every timestamp, every file, every word. I spoke calm, clear. No tears, just facts. The judge's eyes flicked between me and the folder like he'd seen this story 100 times, but not quite like this. 12 minutes later, he dismissed the complaint. Michelle didn't even show up. Of course she didn't. Cowards rarely do. She knew. The same way predators always know when they've picked the wrong woman. By the time I stepped back into the sunlight outside that courthouse, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt free. The kind of free that doesn't need witnesses. 2 weeks later, the divorce finalized. No contest, no arguments, no alimony. He tried to claim the car. I reminded him, calmly, that I'd paid cash from my own savings account. He folded, just like his pride. By fall, I was working part-time at the community center downtown, teaching job readiness classes to women coming out of bad situations, women who'd been through the same storms, women who'd handed their peace over to men who didn't deserve it, women trying to rebuild from the ashes. We'd sit in a circle, fill out applications, rewrite resumes, and talk about what freedom sounds like. And sometimes, when I locked up late, I'd sit there in the quiet, lights low, the city outside whispering through the windows, and I'd think back to that moment, the phone, the bed, the silence, and I'd realize betrayal doesn't always explode. Sometimes it slides in quiet, a glance too long, a whisper too close, a shift in the air that only you can feel. But healing? Healing is loud in its own way. It sounds like peace, like laughter you didn't have to force, like waking up without checking someone else's mood. It sounds like freedom, like walking back into your own life and finally recognizing yourself. 2 months after the divorce was final, I saw Michelle again. It wasn't planned. I was walking out of the Kroger off Martin Luther King Boulevard, pushing a cart with paper towels, almond milk, and a pack of frozen chicken thighs. The automatic doors slid open with that tired sigh they always make, and the humid Georgia air hit me square in the face. I blinked against it, adjusting to the light, and that's when I saw her, by the Redbox machine. Same cheap designer bag slung over her shoulder, same tired eyes still hiding behind a full face of makeup, foundation too light, lashes too long, trying to hold together a version of herself that was slipping. She saw me before I saw her. Her hand froze halfway into her purse, like she'd just touched something burning. Her mouth parted, and for a second I could see the panic bloom across her face. I didn't flinch, didn't break stride. I just walked right past her, pushing my cart slow, deliberate. My sandals squeaked against the pavement, my keys jingled against the side of my purse, and I gave her one nod. Just one. The kind of nod that says, "I already lived through you." She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, maybe an apology, maybe a lie she'd rehearsed for months, but I kept walking. Didn't even look back when I heard her whisper my name. It came out soft, broken, like someone trying to catch a ghost that's already gone. People think closure is a conversation. It's not. Closure is a boundary, and I had already buried that version of myself in the dirt they tried to plant me under. By then, I had rhythm again. My condo was peaceful, small but mine, the kind of peace that hums low like a steady heartbeat. I'd painted the kitchen cabinets myself, sage green, spent an entire Saturday listening to old Anita Baker records, taping edges and brushing slow. I replaced the old handles with gold knobs I ordered online just because I could. Every morning I'd stand there with a mug of coffee leaning against the counter, letting sunlight hit the paint, and every time it made me smile. Soft, private. Every Tuesday and Thursday I taught resume building and mock interviews at the community center. Women who had been through worse than me, women who still showed up, lipstick on, jaw set, refusing to disappear. One of them, Ms. Tyra, said to me one afternoon, "Ms. Renee, you got that peace people can feel when you walk in the room." I smiled. Took me a long time to earn it. Because it did. I earned that peace through every sleepless night, every silent dinner, every time I bit my tongue to keep a marriage from bleeding out on the floor. Now I didn't have to swallow words, didn't have to shrink, didn't have to hide bruises that weren't on my skin, but somewhere deeper. Now I spoke soft because I didn't owe anyone an explanation. And when I did speak, people listened, even the board of directors. They noticed how the women opened up around me, how attendance went up, how people stopped quitting halfway through the program. 2 weeks later, they offered me a full-time position, program manager. Health insurance, paid time off, retirement plan. I said yes, not because I needed the money, but because I finally had something I couldn't buy in my old life, purpose. That winter, I drove to Birmingham to visit my Aunt Deborah. She was the one who raised me after our mother passed. We sat on her porch, wrapped in fleece blankets, sipping peppermint tea, and watching the frost form lace patterns on the railing. The air was cold and still, the kind of cold that made the world feel honest. She looked over at me, her voice low and warm. "You don't carry the weight no more, baby. It's gone." And I felt it, deep in my bones. She was right. Gone was the guilt. Gone was the second guessing. Gone was the version of me who stayed quiet to keep the peace while they set fire to my home. Even my dreams were different now. I didn't dream of him, or her, or the house. I didn't wake up gasping, heart racing, replaying that footage in my head. Now I dreamed of color swatches and recipes, of community cookouts and women laughing around folding tables, of peace. One night, a few weeks after I got back, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, old, crumpled around the edges. Me and Michelle, maybe 10 or 11, years old, standing in front of a birthday cake. The candles were crooked, frosting smudged on our cheeks. She was grinning wide. I was mid-laugh. On the back, written in her familiar loopy handwriting, "I'm sorry I ruined us." No name, no address, no follow-up, just that. I sat with it a while. The wind rattled against the window, carrying the faint smell of rain. Then I folded the photo once, tucked it inside the back of my Bible, and let it be. I didn't need revenge anymore. Didn't need apologies either. That was its own kind of healing. People ask me sometimes if I ever miss them, him, her, that old life, and the truth is, I don't. Because what I had wasn't mine. It was borrowed, built on shaky foundations and stolen glances. What I have now, this peace, this home, this stillness, is mine, fully, completely, mine. And I guard it like my heart depends on it, because it does. Every morning I wake up before sunrise, sit by the window with a warm cup between my hands, and say one thing out loud: I forgive you, but you can't come back here. That's how I keep my heart light. Forgiveness for me, boundaries for them. And love? Love is still out there. I can feel it sometimes, hovering on the edge of possibility, but I'm not chasing it, not this time. This time, it'll have to meet me where I already live, in peace, in truth, in wholeness. And if it doesn't, that's fine too, because I already became the kind of woman I used to pray to become, whole, unbothered, and finally, free. The first time I laughed, really laughed, after all of it, I was standing in line at the DMV. The line was long, the kind that wraps around in slow circles of sighs and shuffling feet. The air smelled faintly of printer ink, old coffee, and impatience. A toddler behind me clutched a juice box like it was treasure. When he dropped it, the sticky orange liquid spread across the tile floor. His mother gasped, reaching for napkins, but the boy just looked up at me with wide, serious eyes and said, "Don't worry, ma'am. My mama says messes can be fixed." And it hit me. Right there under those buzzing fluorescent lights, in a building that smelled like bureaucracy and boredom, that little boy had said something it took me 46 years to understand. Messes can be fixed. Not all at once. Not always with apologies. But with time. With choices. With silence when noise only makes it worse. That afternoon I went home. The condo was quiet, sunlight sliding soft through the blinds, dust floating lazy in the air. I pulled out my old record player, the one my father left me, and set Patti LaBelle spinning. The first notes of "If Only You Knew" filled the room, warm and familiar. I cooked like I hadn't cooked in years. Smothered pork chops, garlic green beans, sweet cornbread muffins with honey glaze. He never liked them, but I always did. The scent filled every corner. I set one plate, lit one candle, and ate slow, blessing every bite, because that table had seen enough betrayal. Now it was going to see some joy. Later that week, I hosted 3 women from the center. We called it Sister Circle. Lena brought her famous peach cobbler, still warm, the crust golden and soft. Cheryl brought homemade lemonade, tart and perfect. And Tyra brought the laughter. I brought the peace. We sat cross-legged on the floor like teenagers at a sleepover. The candles flickered low, catching light on our faces as we talked. We passed tissues, told stories we'd promised we'd never tell. Stories about broken trust, about starting over, about learning to sleep on one side of the bed again. At some point, the tears turned into laughter. We laughed until the streetlights outside came on and our cheeks hurt. It wasn't church, but it felt holy. And that's when I realized something else. Healing ain't always loud. Sometimes it's folding laundry while your favorite song plays in the background. Sometimes it's sleeping through the night without hearing phantom footsteps. Sometimes it's opening your windows and realizing the air feels new again. That spring, I bought a used car, Nissan Altima, cherry red. The dealer kept talking fast, words tumbling like dice. "We can do this rate today only, ma'am. Might as well lock it in." I smiled and let him talk himself in circles. Then I pulled out my folder, loan pre-approval, insurance quotes, VIN research, neatly organized. He blinked, cleared his throat. "You've done your homework." "I've done my life," I said, signing the papers. That pen felt heavy in my hand, the same hand that once wrote apology letters to a man who never read them. Now it signed for me, for my independence, for my new beginning. And that's how everything started shifting. Not with noise, not with revenge, but with choices. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since before the wedding. Each night I'd write my thoughts out like prayers, honest, unfiltered, small things that made sense only to me. Some entries were angry, some were lonely, most were quiet, but each page reminded me I still had a voice. One evening, I got a call from his mother. Now that was unexpected. We hadn't spoken since the papers were signed. Her voice trembled just a little. "Renee, I just wanted you to know he's not doing too well." I didn't ask how, didn't ask where he was, didn't ask if Michelle was still around. That part of my life was a locked door. She hesitated. "I know he messed up. I just hope you're okay." I looked out the window, saw my reflection in the glass. calm, soft, whole. "I'm better than I've ever been," I said, and for the first time, I felt the truth of those words ring through me like a Sunday morning bell. She whispered, "Good," and hung up. That was the last time I heard from any of them. Some stories don't need final chapters. Some doors close and stay closed. And that's not bitterness, that's boundary, because I don't hate them, not anymore. I just love me more. Summer rolled in thick and slow, the way Georgia does best. The air felt heavy with honeysuckle and possibility. The sound of cicadas at dusk was louder than my old fears. One night, I stepped barefoot onto the balcony. The concrete was cool beneath my feet. The city hummed below, streetlights glowing like distant candles. I looked up at the sky, clear, endless, and whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone, just to the moment, to myself, for not folding, for not snapping, for choosing grace over vengeance. People sometimes ask, if you could go back, what would you change? But I don't want to go back. Because even with the pain, even with the betrayal, even with the nights I thought I'd never feel whole again, I found something rare. I found me, and I wouldn't trade her for anything. It was a Sunday afternoon when the envelope came. The air outside was soft and quiet, that slow southern stillness that makes the world sound like it's holding its breath. I was in my kitchen, rinsing out a coffee mug, humming along to an old Otis Redding song when I heard it. A faint shuffed sound near the front door. No knock, no footsteps, just the sound of something sliding across wood. When I walked over, there it was, a plain white envelope. No stamp, no return address. Just my name, written in that slanted handwriting I could recognize anywhere. I froze, because that handwriting wasn't just familiar, it was intimate. The same hand that used to write anniversary cards in blue ink, always signing, "Yours, always." The same hand that used to rest on top of mine during night services at Mount Zion, tapping along to the hymns. But now, that hand had lied. That hand had reached for someone else in the dark. I picked it up slowly, the paper soft and worn, like it had been folded and unfolded too many times before it found my door. I stood there a long time, just staring at it. My heart didn't race. My breath didn't catch. It was a strange stillness, like I'd already read every word inside before opening it. Still, I tore the flap open, careful not to rip the edges, and slid the papers out. 3 pages, front and back, a letter, his voice on paper. But quieter now, desperate. Apologies, confessions, regrets that came too late. He said he missed the way I folded towels, the way I hummed when I cooked dinner, the sound of my laugh through the walls. He said the silence after I left was louder than any argument we ever had. Said Michelle was gone now, too, left him the same way she came. No warning, no shame. He said he was sorry for hurting me, for breaking what he never knew how to rebuild, for confusing my patience with permission. I read every line, every tear-stained loop of his cursive, and for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely nothing reading a man cry on paper. No rage, no relief, just stillness. I folded the letter carefully, smoothed it once with my palm, and tucked it into the bottom drawer of my desk, right beside my birth certificate and the deed to my new life. Because closure doesn't come from someone else's apology. It comes from the day you stop needing one. Later that week, I got an email from Tyra. Subject line, "Don't say no yet." She'd submitted my name to speak at a women's conference in Savannah. When I called her, she laughed like she'd been caught. "You got too much wisdom to keep it to yourself," she said. "I'm not a speaker," I told her. "I don't even own heels that don't hurt." She said, "You don't need slides or a stage or fancy shoes. You are the message. That's enough." Her conviction was contagious. So I said yes. Packed a small bag, pressed my good white blouse, and hit the road early Saturday morning. The highway stretched quiet. the kind of quiet that lets you think. I rolled the windows down just enough to feel the spring air slip through. Patti LaBelle again, then Kirk Franklin, then silence. By the time I reached Savannah, the sun was leaning low, gold over the marshes. The conference hall wasn't big, maybe 100 women, folding chairs, soft lighting, the smell of coffee and shea butter. When I stepped on that stage, I thought my voice might shake. It didn't. I told them everything. Not the sensational parts, but the real ones. The phone on the bed, the footage, the note on the mirror, the silence that followed me until I turned it into peace. And when I finished, the room didn't clap right away. It was quiet. Not because they didn't feel it, but because they did. Then one woman, maybe 30, maybe younger, stood up. Her hands were trembling. Tears shimmered but didn't fall. She asked softly, "How did you know when it was time to leave?" I smiled. The moment I realized staying would cost me myself. She nodded, pressing her lips together, like I'd just given her permission to save her own life. That night, I went back to my hotel room, kicked off my shoes, and let the silence hold me. Then I cried. Not from pain, from release. From knowing that what I'd been through wasn't wasted. It was a map for somebody else to find their way out. That fall, the director of the community center called me into her office. She said there was a grant available for a new outreach program. She wanted me to lead it. Something for women leaving bad situations, she said. You'd know how to build it right. We called it the Quiet Exit. No press, no social media, just help. Quiet, steady, real. A phone line, a small room with clean sheets, job resources, legal referrals, and above all, dignity. Every Wednesday evening, I sat in a circle of folding chairs, listening to stories that sounded too familiar. Different names, same ache. And every time I shared mine, I did it without flinching, because it no longer had power over me. It was just a chapter I'd already closed. One afternoon, as I was locking up, my phone buzzed. Letitia. She was laughing before I could even say hello. "Girl, you're not going to believe who's down here trying to file a DBA with your old last name." I didn't even have to ask. "Tell him," I said, smiling. "That name don't belong to him no more." Letitia hollered so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. And that laugh, it wasn't spiteful. It was freedom in its purest form, because sometimes revenge isn't a scream. It's a laugh in the distance, a name reclaimed, a peace disturbed only by joy. The days kept moving, seasons shifted like clock hands, and one morning in December, I woke up to frost on my window pane, glittering, delicate, beautiful. I wrapped myself in a blanket, poured coffee, and sat there watching the light crawl across the floor. That's when it hit me. I wasn't afraid of birthdays anymore. I wasn't counting my years by what I'd lost. I was measuring them by what I'd built, because every wound had become a brick, every betrayal, a beam, every silent tear, a tile. And now, I had a whole house made of truth, a house I built myself, and I was finally home. The day I saw him again, I was wearing my favorite rust-colored scarf and holding a paper bag of oranges from the Saturday farmers market. The morning had been beautiful, crisp air, soft sunlight, people laughing in that easy weekend way. The kind of day that used to make me believe everything in life could start over if you just took a deep enough breath. Then I saw him, near the bakery booth. He looked older. Not just in the lines around his mouth or the gray creeping through his beard, but in his posture, in the way he stood like a man carrying something heavy that he couldn't set down. Regret has weight, and he'd been dragging his for a long time. He froze when our eyes met. I didn't. I nodded once, cordial, detached, and kept walking. The scarf brushed against my neck as the breeze passed, soft and warm, a little reminder from the universe of how far I'd come from the woman who used to tremble at confrontation. He followed me. "Renee." That voice used to undo me. Now it barely stirred the air. "Can I talk to you?" I stopped just outside the kettle corn stand. The smell of caramel and sea salt rose between us like a thin, sweet wall. I turned slowly, looked him square in the face. The wind lifted the edge of my scarf again, like it was showing him what he could never touch now. "No," I said. Just that. Calm. Final. His mouth opened like he wanted to argue, to say something that might pull me back into that old conversation loop we used to live in, me explaining my pain, him pretending to understand it. But there was no space for that here. Not in this air, not in this peace. I didn't owe him closure, didn't owe him understanding, didn't owe him another ounce of my energy. I had already given everything. This moment wasn't about him, it was about me, standing tall in the very place I used to shrink. He hesitated. His eyes dropped. His shoulders sagged. "Okay," he muttered, voice cracking a little. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. That was it. No begging, no confession, no final declaration of love. Just silence. The same silence I used to fear, now felt like power. I walked home slow, the oranges thumping lightly in the bag against my leg, the late morning sun warming my face. Each step felt like punctuation on a sentence I'd already finished. When I got home, I set the oranges on the counter, washed my hands, and stood at the kitchen sink for a long while, letting the stillness sink into my bones. This was the moment I realized not all revenge is about taking something from someone. Sometimes it's about taking yourself back. The following Monday, I hosted a workshop for 10 new women in the Quiet Exit program. Some still wore bruises, not always on their skin, sometimes in their eyes, in the way they apologized before speaking, in the way they kept their arms folded like protection was muscle memory. We sat in a circle. Coffee cups, notebooks, silence thick enough to feel. Then I spoke, told them my story again, not for sympathy, but for solidarity. But this time, I added something new. "You don't owe anybody an explanation for reclaiming your life," I said, my voice steady, sure. "Silence is not weakness, it's wisdom." They nodded. A few cried. One woman, tiny frame, trembling hands, whispered, "That's the first time I've ever heard someone say what I feel." Her voice cracked on feel. I reached out, touched her wrist. "That means you're healing," I said. And I remembered how powerful it is just to be seen. After class, Tyra caught me by the coffee pot. "You ever think about writing a book?" she asked, eyes gleaming. "Because what you carry, more people need to hear it." I laughed. "I'm not a writer," she smirked. "You weren't a speaker either, and now look at you." That night, after dishes were done and the city lights blinked through my window, I opened my old laptop. It groaned when it started, the fan whining like it was protesting resurrection. I cracked my knuckles and stared at the blank screen. Then I typed the first sentence. I saw my sister's phone beside my husband on our bed. And just like that, everything I had locked inside came rushing out, not as therapy, as testimony, proof that you can live through betrayal and still come out softer, not harder, stronger, not meaner. I wrote every night for weeks, sometimes with tears, sometimes with laughter, sometimes with music playing low, Aretha, Etta, and that old Patty vinyl that had been with me through every version of myself. By January, I had a manuscript. By March, I had a self-published book on Amazon called The Quiet Exit, a story of soft survival. People bought it, but more than that, people felt it. Emails poured in. Women from Texas, Michigan, small towns in Kentucky where nobody ever says the word abuse out loud. They wrote about how my words gave them permission. One woman said she printed chapter 3 and taped it to her bathroom mirror. Another said she read it in secret, parked behind her job, engine running. A librarian in Alabama emailed me an invitation to speak at her town hall. I drove down there one spring afternoon, alone, windows open, my scarf tucked in the passenger seat like a friend. When I stood at that podium, I remembered the woman I once was, the one in her robe, eyes swollen, watching camera footage in the dark, and I smiled. Not out of pride, out of gratitude, because that woman, she made this woman possible. Near the end of the event, a young girl came up to me. Couldn't have been more than 19. She held her copy of the book close to her chest. "My mom went through what you did," she said softly, "but she never got out." Then she hugged me, hard, like she was holding every woman who'd ever stayed too long, and I whispered in her ear, "You still can." Back home, I added her story to my journal, a living record of women who chose peace over pain. I changed the names, but not the truth, because truth doesn't beg, doesn't shout. It just waits, quiet, patient, for you to be ready to live in it. And when you finally do, it wraps you up, like that rust-colored scarf on a cold market day, soft, sure, and undeniable. The sun rose different that morning, not because the light was brighter or the sky more blue, but because I didn't dread the day ahead. That's how I measure my healing now, not by how loud I laugh, or how many people read my book, or how often folks say, "You're so strong." No, I measure it by how soft my mornings feel, how easy it is to breathe, how I can sit on my balcony with a lukewarm cup of coffee, wearing a head wrap and mismatched socks, and feel no need to perform strength, just peace. The world outside was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. A few pigeons gathered on the edge of the roof next door, sunlight turning their feathers into little patches of silver. Somewhere below, a radio hummed faintly from a passing car. I was watering my little aloe plant when the email came. Subject line, "Congratulations, your story has been selected." It was from a women's foundation based in New Jersey. They were curating a collection of essays by Black women on surviving betrayal, and my story had been chosen for the final volume. I didn't even remember submitting it. Must have been one of those late nights when courage whispered louder than fear. I sat there for a while, just staring at the screen, not crying, not gasping, not even smiling wide, just still. Because now, blessings don't rattle me. They affirm me. I closed the laptop, picked up my spray bottle, and went back to misting my plants. Each droplet sparkled in the morning light, tiny reflections of everything I'd rebuilt. Later that week, I went back to the courthouse. Not for a filing, not for a case, but for a panel on women's financial literacy and safety planning. They'd invited me to speak on stage beside a judge, a credit union manager, and a trauma therapist. And there I was, Renee Starks, former wife, former silencer of her own voice, now a speaker, an author, a mentor, a lighthouse. I wore a soft yellow blazer and my grandmother's gold pin, the one she used to wear to Sunday service when she wanted to shine from the inside out. When I stepped behind the microphone, I took a breath. Looked out at the faces in the audience, women of all ages, some teetering on the edge of staying, some quietly ready to go. Their eyes met mine, searching for something steady to hold on to, so I gave them truth. "Ladies," I said, "you don't have to prove pain to earn peace." The room exhaled. You could feel it. Not applause, not noise, just an exhale. Like someone cracked open a window in a room that had been sealed too long. When the panel ended, women lined up to talk, but I stayed a while with a small group in the back. One young woman, barely out of her 20s, asked quietly, "Do you still believe in love?" I smiled, slow and honest. "Yes," I said, "but only the kind that meets me at the level I've grown to." She nodded like something inside her had finally loosened. Because once you learn to love yourself deeply, you stop letting shallow people take up space. The next day, I cleaned out my closet. Not just the clothes, the energy, the ghosts, the what-ifs and used-to-bes. I pulled everything off the hangers and laid it across the bed. There were dresses that once made me feel like proof of love, heels I'd worn to dinners where I'd stayed silent to keep the peace. One by one, I folded them, bagged up 3 full trash bags of things that no longer fit who I am, metaphorically and literally. I drove them over to the Goodwill near Macon Street. The man working the drop-off dock smiled politely. "You want a receipt?" he asked. I laughed. "No, baby. This one's for my soul." He chuckled, not fully understanding. But that was fine. Some healing doesn't need witnesses. When I got back in my car, I rolled the windows down and let the wind rush through. It caught the ends of my head wrap, fluttering behind me like a small banner of freedom. I didn't look back. That version of me was gone, carried off somewhere between the stoplights and the song playing low on the radio. Now, I teach a class every Friday called Still Standing. It's not in the brochure, not on the sign outside, but every seat is full, because word travels. That there's a woman who survived her sister, survived her husband, survived silence and betrayal, and came out not bitter, but better. Every week we gather in a circle with tea and notebooks. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we don't. Sometimes a woman will just sit beside me after class, not to speak, just to sit. Like being near someone who made it helps her believe she can too, and that's enough. I don't need recognition, don't need revenge, don't need apologies wrapped in manipulation. What I need, I already have. Stillness, a life that fits, and a voice that doesn't tremble when I use it. These days, peace isn't quiet. It hums, soft but strong, like a song I finally learned the words to. And if you're wondering if he ever reached out again, no, he didn't. But his sister follows me on Facebook now. I see the little likes on my posts, the quiet ones, the ones that land like, "I see you," and that's fine. Let them watch. Let the ones who underestimated me realize they never knew me at all. Because now, I don't move for them. I move for me. I found love again. Not in a man, not yet, but in myself. In this version of Renee who knows how to set the table for one and still feel full. Who knows how to say no and mean it. Who knows that revenge isn't always a grand gesture. Sometimes it's just living so well they wouldn't even recognize the woman they tried to destroy. The sun was setting by the time I closed my journal that night. Golden light spilled across my walls, warm and forgiving. Outside, the city hummed, alive and slow. I sat there a while, listening, grateful, free. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.